and that we're working with right now to get out the vote of all our APIs. So I know that the pandemic has put quite of a twist into all of our efforts to reach the people in our community. But I've also recognized that many of us have already started figuring out really creative ways to reach out using social media, using other creative ideas. And so part of the agenda today is going to be talking about just how to reach out, how to get out the vote, how to do voter registration in the time of the pandemic. And I know that many of you, this is basic, but for those volunteers and organizers who you'll be recruiting to come on, hopefully this will be a webinar that they can refer back to just as a starter. So a lot of this will be just basic stuff that I know many of you have gone through, but you know, this is part of the conversation we're having now that we're in this situation. So we're going to be talking about voter registration, just the basics, the do's and the don'ts, and what it takes to do a successful voter drive. And then we'll talk about NVRD Day, which is September 22nd, and then early vote, which is October 24th. And then also introducing our relational organizing tool, or an app that we are pushing out to our partners. And I know that if you have some already, it'd be good to have you share some of those. Let's see. Hey, Christine, can you, I don't have the ability to move. Okay, so voter registration, the question now is, you know, what we used to do before is very different what we're doing now. But some of the things that are related to voter registration is still the same. So when we do registration, in general, we just gotta make sure that we let our folks know and our volunteers and know that some of the, which is, you know, people can register to vote if they're 18 and naturalized or born in this country as a citizen. And, you know, with all the news that you see about different states having different dates now for mail-in voting, registration deadlines, drop-off, mail-in ballots like that. So there are different states that have different rules or requirements for registration. So one of the things we're going to talk about today is what are some of those changes and what do we do and how do we recruit folks, how do we register folks in our community. And then there are some requirements that that we have to conform to. Can we go to the next slide? If you are unsure of anything relating to elections or registration, your state Secretary of State's office or county elections will have that information. So, well, of course, one of the first things is, you know, proof of citizenship, and some states require that those who want to vote, there's a certain timeline where they have to live in the county to prove that there's citizenship. Otherwise, they'll be rejected. So there are different requirements for moving and for how long you have to be in that particular area in order to vote. If your state requires it, be sure to check what kind of form you need to prove your citizenship in your state. And like I said, you know, we have information on our website too that links to the different county and state elections sources. So you can always check. With the pandemic, everybody is using a lot of these websites than never before, you know, to check registrations, to check where they're voting, to check some of these issues with requirements. So there are some voter ID laws and that you should be aware of as a volunteer, as somebody who's gonna possibly teach or train your volunteers to go out to get voter registrations from 2010 to 2014, 21 states. That's nearly half of our states have put in place some new voter ID laws, and then which requires them to prove who they are before they hit the polls. Or in this case, maybe that process happens before they do the mail-in vote or mail-in ballot. So places like Wisconsin, if you've seen in the news, Wisconsin and Texas, it's just been, you know, horrible, right? Where you have polling places that used to be in the thousands, and now they're literally just in the hundreds. And so squeezing a lot of people into one place to be able to vote, or making people actually go and vote in person, or not making it available for mail-in ballots. So check for any changes in early voting dates and deadlines, voter requirements, what proof you need, and what are the hours for the polling. And then there are some states that we know across the country that do same-day voter registration. So be sure to pay attention to some of those caveats in different states. In order to vote, you have to fill out a voter registration application. And there's a national application that you fill out. This one is in Georgia. So be sure to, they're all available online at the Secretary of State's office, and many nonprofits and many you know, organizations like ours, we have links to them. So APIAVote has links to some of these information that you can go and see what the application looks like and how you fill it out. Some will require you to fill it out and then send them in. Some you can actually just do online. In the different states, they automatically send it to you if you're already registered for a mail-in ballot, for example. But in order to register to be on the list, there are forms that you can fill out.
So this is Christine. I want to go ahead and weigh in here is that for some states like Florida, you know, you have to be credentialized, or sometimes you have to get your forms from the Secretary of State's office or your local county. But for the most part, I think voter registration has become a lot easier in the majority of all the states. Once again, we want to highlight, it is about, you know, these different components of first name, last name, middle name. But one thing to really point out is that, you know, in our Asian language, sometimes, you know, if, like I know in Chinese, the Chinese name is actually you use your family name, my last name first in my actual Chinese name. So if they're used to thinking that way, you have to make sure that their last name is truly their last name and their first name is really their first name and not vice versa. And then the other thing is, you know, how number 2, it says residence, address, city, and county. Another thing that we've always seen is that county, maybe people think of that as country. So that's also another area that you may want to also take a look at and making sure that they actually did note that correctly. One thing that's a little bit different in some of the other voter registrations, like I believe Nevada and California, they do have a section called country of origin, which is amazing for identifying Asian Americans and sub-ethnic communities when we're doing targeting of our own communities. So I just want to flag that, especially for those who are in Nevada and California in itself.
Great, thank you.
We also wanted to note that there is also a national voter registration form. So even though if you're doing an event at the national level, and for whatever reason, even though these days, I think for the most part, people are collecting national voter doing voter registration at national events through the internet or through your laptop. So it's a lot easier, but for whatever reason, if you do need to use a physical form, you can use a national voter registration form and you could download it from this website from the federal government. And then that way you could use that for any individual from all the various different states. Like I said, this is really great when you're really at an event that's nationally focused and you have people from all these different states.
And so at APIAVote, we register folks to vote. If you come to our website, apiavote.org. And so we have our own where you can just select or give us your address and your or your email and your zip code, and then you'll get information on it. Also, so you can register. You have people come to our our organization website and register there. We're also part of Rock the Vote, which is a voter registration tool, and I've used it myself, and it's pretty. It's pretty quick. Within a couple of minutes, you can get registered to vote, or you can find out if you register already. So we have we're partnership with them, and we use that as another tool.
So we actually, if you could go back, we do encourage each of you to sign up for this tool, so that way you could keep track of how many registrations you are collecting. Because I think many times, especially when we're relying on social media, people are posting, saying register. They think it's going, a lot of people are posting it, but in reality, they may only receive like 10 registrations, right? And then that way it'll allow you to really rethink about your strategy, your messaging. Other times you may be like, oh, suddenly you got 100. Then you may want to identify, like, when do you get that 100? Oh, was it because this individual is a great influencer, was able to go ahead and make the difference? Or what was it that you did differently that allowed you to go ahead and get more registrations? Also, with this Rock the Vote tool, because on the back end, this is all being run by Rock the Vote, you are able to select a language. So it does provide you into a multitude of different Asian languages as well.
Christine, is this something that when you on the back end, can you see the names? Can you get the names of the people who registered, or just a number?
Correct. So once you get your own individual online tool, you can go ahead and log in, and you will see individuals that have registered. Also, in the form, you could also add in asking them for permission to be able to contact them, to provide them with additional information to help them prepare for the elections. So then that way it will allow you to go ahead and contact them as follow-up, especially as you host like different community events or candidate forums, or if you want to send out reminders and making sure that they have the information that they need to protect their vote as they go to the polls.
And I know that I've shared this tool in a little bit more detail with some of the partners that I've talked to, but if you need help setting up the Rock the Vote account, just let me know, and let one of us know, APIAVote. But you can definitely just go on there and just sign up as an organization, and then they'll when you go through the process, you'll get a login, and you have your own little code, and then you can get going on your voter registration drive. So one of the first things, of course, is you should never assume that people are registered to vote, even though they may tell you they're registered to vote. So one way to do that is just to ask a simple question. Are you registered to vote? They may say yes or no. It doesn't matter. But the other question is, how do you check your registration status? And that's the more important question when you talk to voters, because they have registered before, but we don't know if that's still valid today, right? So maybe we don't know what if they haven't voted, let's say for a couple of times, they may have been purged from the voting list. So we don't. So that one of the important things to do is to check, and there's many ways to check. A lot of states, Secretary of State's office have links where you can actually just put in your information and you can check to see if you're registered to vote.
Sorry.
So there are certain deadlines, important deadlines you should, folks should keep in mind. One, registration deadline for your state, right? It varies anywhere between 8 and 30 days. So it's really important to check what those deadlines are. And then during this pandemic, early vote, it seems to be the thing, right? They don't want to, nobody wants to go out there and wait in line like some people did in Wisconsin, right? So early vote is really important. And then just knowing the rules about the voter ID. And for a lot of people, they want to get their voting done before the actual election day, which is November 3rd. And so you don't want to wait until the last minute to check to see if you're registered and you've missed the date for early vote and other deadlines for voter registration. If you don't live in a state that's like same day voters registration, so it can be difficult. So earlier the better.
So you're also going to be seeing a lot of the new hashtag, "Are you vote ready?" So so many times it's not even a matter of starting the conversation like, "Are you registered?" It's more like, "Are you vote ready?" Have you checked your voter registration status lately? Because we are seeing purging from different counties, and so you should always check ahead of time before the voter registration deadline.
So these are deadlines for different states. You know, if you see your state in here, you might want to write that down and then check with your Secretary of State's office. But it varies. You see how it varies across the country.
I should also want to point out that these are voter registration deadlines for if you are voting on, if you're registering online or if you're mailing in your voter registration form. Because there are a number of same day registration states that are listed, and you'll be like, why do they have a voter registration deadline? That's the difference, is that these are the deadlines for online registration or for the hard copy.
And these are the states that with same day registration. So if you see the ones in blue, it's already past election, you know, past election day registration, but they haven't implemented yet. And the purple are the ones that are same day registration in Hawaii. I see Wisconsin, Michigan, Maine, DC, Nevada, Colorado, Washington. So there's a link there to the National Conference of State Legislators below where you can see the same day registration information. And voter registration common mistakes. It varies. I mean, things like what we talked about before, where you really have to pay attention to words like country versus county, or mixing up date of birth with today's date. Some people have really long last names, or just last names, first names, or long names. So, you know, being sure to make sure that those are properly inputted. We may not have an issue with not being legible because we have to type, but if you had you know, in the olden days, you had to fill out a card, it's being legible is really important. And then of course, checking the citizenship boxes, the age boxes, and you have to sign it in order to be valid. So these are the common mistakes we will make in voter registration. Okay, here's a test. Can you see the errors for this one? We talked about some of the common mistakes.
Feel free.
Lines 1 through 7 are you know, and 12 are like the things you have to have.
So actually, if you let's just wait for a couple of seconds. If someone wants to unmute yourself and weigh in, like, where do you think the mistake is? Actually, if you could just go ahead and unmute yourselves, I think you should be able to.
Be able to. Let's see. For those of you who raise your hand, just
2 and 3 aren't checked.
yeah. County is in the U.S. That's a good one.
I think those are the ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they didn't put their county in.
Yeah, they put USA. They thought it was country. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, what about this one?
Well, yeah. What about this one? That's right. What are the issues with this one? Driver's license. Somebody said driver's license. Okay. Tiffany, you said they didn't say Jacksonville. They should say Jax. It should be spelled out. First name not spelled out. That's good. They didn't check citizenship. Thanks, Kanika. Good eyes.
I think they got it.
Yeah, that's good. All right. Oops. So just some basic do's and don'ts, right? We cannot, give people money by the hour for doing this. And you have to say, if you put up a sign that says free for everyone, right? You can.
So these are the do's, actually.
All the dues. You refer them to both party sites. So when you do this, we're nonpartisan, right? So you're an organization that do nonpartisan work. You should try to refer people to both or more sources, party sources, or more neutral one is the League of Women Voters. Refer the press to the communications person, right? Something you don't want to do is offer money, right, for registration. Give out freebies or any kind of freebies when people register. Tell people what party they belong to, or you belong to, and start yapping at the press, right? So some of the things that you don't want to engage in doing is just pretty basic, but these are good things to, like I said, when you do trainings for volunteers, it's really important to abide by these do's and don'ts.
And let me actually, if you go back, let me go through a little bit of the nuances about that. So the first one is about the compensation. So it's not about per voter registration. It really is about, you could compensate someone for their time to actually be a paid voter registration staff person, right? The other nuance in regards to free events. Okay, so many times we know that to get someone's attention, you like to be able to give things away, right? But if you're only giving it to individuals who are registering, that is being seen as you're bribing or you're paying someone to register. So the workaround that is that you have to be able to provide whatever you're presenting free for everyone. And you could do it in different ways. Either that they're coming up to you to have a conversation and you give everyone that approaches your table that free item. Or if you want, you could have them like participate in a survey or something else. And then along with that, then you ask them, are you ready to vote this year? Would you like to register? And that's how you intertwine that. So those are some of the workarounds that I just want to point out.
Of course, when we're registering people to vote, we should know what the rules are. This is taken from Ohio's website for.
Actually, no, this is the
Fair. You want to say something about this?
This is the Fair Elections Network.
Yeah.
So when in doubt, everyone, we want you to remember this particular website, Fair Elections Network. This is a tool that we've used in all of our trainings, even in-person trainings. What you do is you'll go ahead and go to your particular site. And this one, I went ahead and captured Ohio. And you'll see there, they actually have a voting guide in different PDFs in terms of the rules and regulations around all these different questions that you may have around voter registration, early vote, and what type of ID and all those type of things. So they have a legal network that updates this. And so we as a organization and all of our partners really follow and utilize their guides. So at minimum, whatever state you're working at, I would download this guide and make sure you have that and you share that with all of your volunteers to use as part of your training.
So you're already doing it or you're ready to roll out your registration drive. The idea really is that it's not a one-time event, right? We're now in a pandemic where sometimes we're doing hybrid, voter registration drives. Sometimes we just do virtual. And so we'll talk about some of that, about what the idea is behind this. And it really is, and during this time, it's really not kind of just a feel-good activity. It's a way to engage the community in lots of ways as people are, holding into their work or into their life under the pandemic. So the idea behind voter registration drive is really to hone in on the idea that this is how we build democracy. This is what it's all about. every 4 years, every 2 years, every election cycle. It's building blocks. And the way you build that is to register people to vote. And so when you go out there, that's the main idea behind it. There are 5 different rules to make it a successful drive. Like we talked about before, knowing what the rules are, go to that page, the Fair Elections page, go to your Secretary of State's office website, know what the rules are, and then set some goals. And I've shared with some of the partners across the country about having a field plan, which involves, voter outreach. You do have to come up with a plan, write one. And if I have some sample ones that I can share. So if you haven't, you're just starting, and you need a place to start, make a plan. And then the most important part of this is recruiting. Right? You have to recruit people to help you do this, whether it's people in your organization, or whether people you've served before, whether it's other coalition partners that you've been working with. It's now more than ever before, it's probably a really good time to recruit, because people you can just recruit people for virtual events, and people don't have to come out, people don't have to drive, you don't have to feed them pizza, things like that. They can feed their own themselves. And then the other thing is keeping good records of what you're doing, and that helps with building this kind of event for the next time there's an election. So keeping good records and having accountable to yourself and to what your work is. And when you're done, or while you're doing it, double checking your work. So these are some basic ways or rules that will keep your drive a successful one, or to make one a successful one. In terms of making a plan, or having a plan for a voter registration drive, it's really important to have goals, and that goal meaning how many people you want to register, maybe a number, right? And in order to reach that, how many Zoom sessions will you do? How many hybrid events will you have out there? How many social distance event can you have? So the number of activities you do will determine how successful you are in reaching your goal, and then also determining how many volunteers you'll need to reach those numbers that you're looking at. It won't just depend on the volunteers; it also depend on who else you're working with in the community, and then of course, everything costs money. So whatever your budget is, it will also determine how successful your plan will be. And then putting in a timeline. We have 61 days until the election. So it's really critical to put a timeline on it and work backwards and how you're going to achieve that goal. Monthly, weekly, and then daily. How you structure your timeline is really important. And just so that it's, you have a nice plan. You really can't have a plan if you don't have a way to organize it. And so having people in charge of different activities, making people, let's say, phone banker captain, or, a Zoom czar or somebody, right? So you have to build an organizational chart of who's responsible for what. In establishing your goal, like we talked about, how many people you hope to register, put a number on it. And we're not living in an in-person pre-pandemic area, and if it's an in-person, if you can still do it in some of your states, 1 in 5 person will register with you. If you're doing it in person, you go out there asking people to register. By phone, it's 1 in 10. Online outreach, it's a lot harder to do online outreach, maybe 1 in 20. And so this will give you an idea of how you'll reach your goal and what kind of activities you need to have planned. Planning ahead. Planning ahead involves, we'll talk about some of the events that you could probably still do, given the social distance rules and health situations that we're in. But just planning ahead for what you'll need. If you're planning to do a virtual voter registration event with, with a couple of partners and their volunteers, what will you need? And what kind of plans we use. Some of these don't apply because we're not going out there to actually do a drive. But if you plan to do some of them, these will be some of the the important things to plan ahead for.
Yeah, we just wanted to flag that still for you because I do know that a number of us are looking at, like even for census, we've done census caravans, but I know a number of organizations are doing get out the vote or voter registration caravans. And so there are still organizations out there that are being creative and doing physical activities. And so a lot of those tips that we just provided there still apply.
And, in prepping your volunteer toolkit or packets, right, for people going out there to get folks registered. And many of you are already doing this, but just prepping, things like tablets, laptops, in place of clipboards. And, and the push now is just online voter registration. If you're still out there using cards, practice social distancing, right? So some of the rules around what states can do what. And then also coming up with the volunteer wrap. We'll go through that in a bit. And some Q&A, a sheet of Q&A so that you can be ready when people have questions. And then also be equipped with some online information, maybe links, have a list of links that you can really text to people or give it out if you're doing posting, or if you're in a virtual situation, you can just drop that in the chat box and things like that. So these are some of the things that you just need to get prepared for. Also, just remind that whoever you're training to be your volunteers to go out or to do virtual, voter registration drives, for them to just, practice simple things like being proactive, smile if they're going to be on Zoom, right? So we'll talk a little bit about that when we get to the section on what social media etiquettes you should have. Here, we're trying to see what is available out there so you could do voter registration, and some of the physical spaces that you could possibly do a voter registration drive or drive-through, anything that's drive-through, events. I've heard people doing, doing things at drive-through, concerts, or, where people are gathering, doing drive-throughs, and that's where you can also drive through and do voters registration. Grocery stores, people still go to grocery stores. Community health centers. I know there's some restrictions on what people can do, but it's where people go. Food programs, there's quite many organizations are doing food drives, food programs, and we've done that with the census. So in the way that we did the census, we can also do the same thing with voter registration. Drugstores, farmers markets are still open. Anything that's open in the open space, like the outdoor dining, are much better than inside some building, or what people used to do, what organizations used to do is to do the voter registration at citizenship ceremonies. And now those are almost non-existent, but those are really good places to do, but they're indoor. So if there are things outdoors, we can do that. Online spaces, there are lots of online community fairs, festivals, or concerts are organized online, whether it's a music festival online gaming. And this is where you may have to partner up with the folks who are organizing the event to see if they'll let you, or they'll promote, let's say you're a Rock the Vote, toolkit, or let's say you're working with somebody and say, and we want to do a voter registration drive as part of this, will you let us do this online with you? And that's you can be part of that.
Yeah, I also want to provide some strategies that I've already started utilizing. So even though, depending on the organization that you're working with, even if they're not doing a full-blown push for voter registration, if I'm on there as a participant, I'm actually in the chat room responding to people, and I actually always redirect the conversation to like, well, you know, that's why if you're concerned about XYZ issue, this is why you need to go ahead and register to vote. Here's a quick link. You know, so I continue to fill that in throughout the conversation in the chat room. So that way there's different opportunities for people to register.
So you're recruiting volunteers to help do the voter registration, push. And so whether it's through Zoom or some other online tools, let's say a 30-minute training session. So these are some of the things that you might do. In person, it'll be similar, but in a Zoom session, I think it'll be the same, where you go down this list of what you need for training, doing a volunteer training session. The purpose of your drive and what your goals are. Go over the rules for voter registration, and then do role playing, with the sample rap about what people may ask you and what your answers will be. Ask volunteers to partner and role play, right? So and then make sure that they have all the toolkit that they need. So if you're doing a Zoom training for volunteers, just keep this list in mind about what you should cover in that training, so that once your training is done, at least a volunteer walks away with some knowledge about what the picture looks like if they're going to do a Zoom voter registration drive. I talked a little bit before about what some of the things that if you're going to do a virtual session, virtual drive, practicing online etiquette. What we've been doing now, we're all learning how to do this, right? Even including this webinar. Muting microphone, making sure that there's minimum noise, camera, distractions, people doing a lot of things at once. But also part of the training is also preparing the materials in advance, so that when the volunteers get done with it, they have something to take with them, sharing the slides. Somebody asked whether this slide's going to be available after the webinar, and it will be. So this is also recorded. So also, part of doing this is that these are volunteers. So you have to figure out a way to also make it fun, right? Make it fun, ask people to join in and make it a fun event. So it can't just all be serious work. And then sending people out, right? Sending people out to do these this work. Let's say you're doing a voter drive online. It's good to check in with them, see how they're doing, and then afterwards, do a debrief, ask how it went, and people can share stories about what they encountered during their let's say during their texting session with somebody, or walking somebody through a online voter registration event, how that was. And then afterwards, making sure that, emails are sent out, and thank you notes are sent out to people who were part of it. So here's a sample of the rap. Let's say my name is Yi, and I'm a volunteer with APIAVote, and I just want to check in, right? So we talked about this. This is a pandemic, so part of it is that you want to relate to that voter in some way. And one of the ways that we thought might be important is to ask them, do a little health check, ask them how they're doing during this pandemic, and then go right into some of the asking them what are some of the most pressing issues that you're concerned about, and wait for their answer. And once they give you an answer, whatever that is, say thank you for sharing. It's really important that people in elected office address those concerns, right? Whether those concerns are healthcare, education, economy, just what's going on in the country. And then say, given the new reality, are you ready to vote? Get right to the point, right? And they say yes, then you say, have you moved or have you changed your name? And then say, I think we should check your registration, because there might have been some changes, right, in the way you vote this year, or your name may have been purged because you haven't voted in a while. but either way, let's check it. It'll only take a few minutes. So this is how you get right down to the registration or the checking of whether they're registered. If their answer is no, then you still say, well, it's okay. You know, I can still register if you like, you know, and then you ask them the question, are you a citizen? Basically, can you vote? Can you legally vote if you're a citizen, right? So this is something that we practice, right? We role play among the volunteers and practice this so that you're not reading it off, and you'll get better, and people will get better and better once they're comfortable with it, but it just becomes a conversation. And people will say, for example, well, how do you answer people who say, I don't want to vote, or it doesn't matter what my vote is. My vote doesn't matter, it doesn't count. And politicians ignore us anyway. So the things you want to respond to that with is that, you know, there are decisions are being made every day, right? That affect you, or your work, your home. Your vote actually determines who gets to make those decisions and how those decisions are made. So you're by voting, you're determining who gets to make those decisions. So remind them that, you know, in this country, it's one person, one vote. And if you're not voting, you know, somebody else is going to vote, right? And then they determine who gets to make those decisions, not you. So this is a way to convince them that, you know, your vote matters. As an AAPI community, you know, if more of us go out to vote, it shows that we, you know, it shows that we're concerned about the issues, and we want to have a place at the table. We want our voices heard. So that they have to act. So that's why we need them to register to vote. So that's sort of your closing on why they should register to vote. And this is part of your drive will be how you manage your volunteers. So the way you calculate how you're going to meet your goals that we talked about before. And the rule of halves is, you know, if you wanted 50 people to be volunteers, you need to recruit, you know, 100, right? So in my experience, it's actually a lot less. I say recruit 500 people in order to get, like, you know, 100 volunteers. So, but the bigger the pool of people you have to work with, the more success you'll have in terms of volunteers that you're going to need. So,
I mean, you're going to know your community, your local community, but in general, it is about the rules of halves.
Yeah.
So,
so that's a good way to measure how big of a universe you have to reach in order to get the kind of volunteers you want. So, and then of course, you know, you celebrate, right? Once you're successful at a drive, you celebrate. Once we get people out to vote, and November 3rd comes, we celebrate. But, you know, let people know that, you know, their vote is that important, that once they register and they vote, it's a big win for all of us. So I'm going to turn it over to Christine to talk about one of the tools that we'll be using. It's called Each Circle.
We only have 8 minutes, and I want to make sure we get to some of your questions. So I'm going to breeze through this really quickly. Next week, and actually today, you can even start to use this as well, and we'll tell you how to go about doing that. We are using, as we say, relational organizing is a key right now, since we're not interfacing with individuals publicly. So it's really about getting as many volunteers to really use their own relationships to get people organized to register and to go vote. So with that, we're always focusing that, you know, friends connecting with friends about the issues that they care about is really the most effective way of doing this. So why relational organizing? It's 10 times more effective in getting your friends to vote than a stranger, right? And it also increases by 20% of voter turnout. And how do you go ahead and get started? So APIAVote went ahead and invested in Outreach Circle. It's an online relational organizing platform to really help us focus on assisting with this effort. So what it is that this is an easy way for you to connect up with APIAVote's efforts. What I've been finding is that we're getting all these requests from different national and local organizations, and different individuals are like, how can we participate? How can we get involved? So since we don't have time to handhold everyone, we're trying to get everyone onto this app, whether they're an individual or if they're an organization. Then that way, this is the best way that every week we could provide you with activations or information on how to get involved and get informed. It's an easy and fun way for people to recruit their friends to help out. It helps APIAVote also keep track of the individuals who registered and voted, so that individuals can be taken off the list so they can focus on reaching more voters. And then it's also available as a mobile app or just through your web browser. So it's really accessible in any which way. One thing I really want to focus on is the beauty of Outreach Circle is the privacy and confidentiality. We will never share or sell your contact information with any third party. Actually, APIAVote never even sees anyone's contact information. Contacts are kept private to you and to the individual. So even for you, so let's say your local organization and your coalition, you get other organizations to join your outreach circle that we've onto this platform, and then you take some of the recommended actions that we're pushing out for that week, and you modify it for yourself, and you push that out to all your friends, and they actually push that out to their own friends and family. All those contacts are kept private, so no one can ever contact them except for that particular individual. Messages are also coming from that specific supporter and not APIAVote and not necessarily your organization. It's really about that individual modifying that content and pushing that out. And then responses will never be tracked. The only thing that we actually ever see is whether or not people have taken action. So we know that how successful we are in terms of motivating all of our individual members to actually take the action. So here's an example in terms of some of the actions that we may push out from week to week, because the next 10 weeks are really, or actually 8 or 9 weeks are really going to fly by very quickly. So we want to have specific actions that are lined up with the timeline that we have. So it could be everything from recruiting 10 captains to sharing a video, starting a conversation about a topic. You could even organize a happy hour to complete ballot applications, invite members to take a survey. We're going to be providing different opportunities for people to naturally be able to talk about the elections, to making sure that they're registered to vote, to even help them complete their ballots, and then and making sure that they actually do turn out to go vote, whether it's early on or on election day in itself. So like I said, it is a communication method that you could use Outreach Circle to reach your contacts, whether it's through social media, texting, by phone, or in person in itself. So it's really easy. This is the link that we're providing to you, so that way you could go ahead and sign up today onto our Outreach Circle. And then you'll see a view action button on the APIAVote page. And then that way you can go ahead and sign up for your particular Outreach Circle and then get started. Like I said, then you could go ahead and share this with other organizations, or if you're an organization yourself, you could go ahead and share this with your key organizers and get them onto that. And then just essentially tune in, and you'll be able to see all the different recommendations of what we want you to push out week by week. Here's is also 5 easy steps in terms of how this actually looks like. I will just share that with you just because we are running out of time. And then I just want to also flag once again for National Voter Registration Day. It is September 22nd. It is the national holiday. This is the link that we're encouraging you to sign up if you haven't done that yet. That way you also will receive up-to-date information as we're leading up to September 22nd and a number of different best practices. They also are having a specific webinar about how to plan NVRD events in the age of COVID-19. So this is also a great webinar for you to also tune in as well. And some of the different activities that they're also, that I've heard people recommend is really about a voter registration caravan, house party, boba tea, having a vote ready concert, spoken word or poetry reading, phone banking party, texting party, cooking demonstrations, but all that where whatever event you're having, you're integrating why it's important to register, why people are registering, and giving them the opportunity to do that in itself. Here are some of the resources that they have in language that's available online for you to download and print out. And then also, once again, October 24th is Vote Early Day for you to also participate in as well. So with that, I want to go ahead and see if we could open it up if anyone wants to unmute themselves to ask any questions.
There's there's an online question about in California, the mail-in ballot will be automatically sent to register in California or not, and do they need to request one?
Yes, so in once again, in certain states like California, you will be sent an automatic ballot for you to go ahead and do that. Actually, California, Oregon, Washington, a number of states have been switching over, or some of them have already switched over to an all mail-in ballot system. Beauty of California is that you also have 10 days where within your county, you could go anywhere to drop off your ballot as well.
Christine, this is Victor Sin from National Alliance, California. Okay, there is a little bit of updates. People need to know, okay, if people are inactive voters in California, then depending on the county, they may not receive votes by mail ballot unless they contact the registrar of voters office to either update their address or tell them that okay, they still live there and they want to get a 3 p.m. ballot. So I guess the key message okay here is that for Californians, they need to check their registration status, make sure they are either active or if not, notify ROV that's okay, they want to vote.
Great. I know a number of people are asking about the outreach circle. As soon as we are done, and unfortunately we have a 4 o'clock call that we have to jump over to, is that we will go ahead and provide you the link and this PowerPoint. So then that way you guys could go ahead and get started. Next week, we are going to have a more extensive webinar just on outreach circle. So we recommend you to sign up for that particular session. And
so thank you for joining. And then I know that many of you will also hop on our community outreach call. So I'll see you guys over there, the other side.
Great. I think we hopefully answered all the questions that were on here. Like I said, a lot of it we will go ahead and send out. Thank you, everyone.